Welcome, everyone. We are live. This is the first installation of Future Signal Fridays, my attempt at creating a live show that is going to recap the week and talk about all kinds of things. I think we're going to talk about Bitcoin, crypto, global news, tech, all kinds of stuff. It was quite the week. I'm just dropping some links right now for people. So give me a second and I will be right there. So let's dive in. I have a split screen situation going on here because I need to basically figure out how I'm going to manage the comments and manage the presentation that I have created. So, never done this all in one. And so, you're going to get to see some of the behind the scenes, I think, but we're going to try to make do here. So, let's dive in. Drop your links. Grant, love to see you. Actually, Grant, I had Marco Santini on the podcast. It's coming out Tuesday. He's an artist, and I quoted you many times. So you have to stay tuned for that. But let's dive right in. This is not financial advice. This is edutainment. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to put this up on podcast platforms because it's way more visual, way more for YouTube. If this isn't a podcast platform and you are listening to it, you need to definitely go over to YouTube. I think I'm going to keep this, however, a YouTube only thing. So, anyway, this is not financial advice. This is edutainment. This is my first time trying to do this. So, this week we're going to focus on Bitcoin, crypto, AI, personal finance, prediction markets, and we're going to have content recommendations. Now, I will say that I stole the content recommendations from the guys over at the Empire Podcast. I used to be working at Blockworks and I was working with them, and they did a really cool piece at the end, which was content recommendations. And they would recommend a book, they would recommend a show, they would recommend a movie, basically anything that was giving them happiness or giving them joy outside of like normal being on X, building in crypto. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. If Grant, I see so Grant, you're watching on X. How is it going on X? How's the sound? How's the feed? I hope I've even attached my mic. I feel all over the place. I wasn't in my right mind as I was setting this up. So anyways, let's dive in. We're going to start with Bitcoin this week. Bitcoin, every week there's always something going on, and I think we're going to zoom out a little to start. Price right now, and I took the screenshot about 10 to 15 minutes ago, so don't hold me to this, but we're around 115,000. And I just love that 115,000 for people is bullish since we've gone all the way up to 124,000. Grant says it's perfect on X, which is great to hear. I did no promotion for this. I didn't create a LinkedIn. I have a decent following on LinkedIn, and I didn't create anything on LinkedIn. I made no more noise about this. I posted once on X and said I was going to go live. So I'm actually hoping to just get through this and then be able to repost it on YouTube, as opposed to making a lot of noise and actually having a lot of people in the live. Moving forward, obviously that's the goal, to have people join the live, be in the comments and everything. But looking back at Bitcoin is at 115,000 right now. And I wanted to show this. This is us zooming out a little bit. So if you see that first green arrow, that was the 2017, 2018 high of, I think, 19,500, $20,000. Then you see the next green arrow is the 2021, 2022 high. It's really the fall of 2021. And so that was, 8 years ago, essentially, to 2017, 2018, 4 years ago to 21, 22. And now as we go up, you can't see it there, but the line, the x-axis there should be 2025. The question is, where do we go now? So this was an all-time view on CoinMarketCap that I created, and then this was just a year view, and you can see the view. So this is Bitcoin in the last calendar year. Last November 20th, or November 4th, I guess, when the election happened, that was when that first boom started to happen in the last fall, when Trump won the election, and it just looks super bullish for Bitcoin. Then you see the huge drop in the spring of 2025. That is when tariffs kind of got kicked in and people started to just feel like there was uncertainty globally around the tariffs. And then finally, we go all the way to the right and you see the question mark. The question mark being, what is going to happen to Bitcoin? We're not sure, but if we look to the past, we can kind of see. We're going to get into what has happened in the bull markets over the last 2013, 2017, and 2021. in the bull market year, so we can kind of look at that. But I wanted to share this. This is more of a stock to flow, which I think has kind of gone out in favor among the Bitcoin crowd. I don't really hear anyone talking about the stock to flow anymore. But here in the stock to flow, I think it's really important. If you look on the right, you'll see days until the next halving. And so when it's red is when it's, really far away. But the closer you get to purple, the closer you get to the halving. And as you go from the red to the purple, if you see on the right side there, you have to go basically through a bear market. So in the blue is where the Bitcoin is going to be down. But as you can see, before you get to the blue, it's in that green area. That is really where Bitcoin has seen its highs. You can see back, in and around 2013 when it popped, in and around 2017 when it popped, and then in 2021, you can see where it was green. We're slowly going from yellow to green right now. So we're in probably the 3-month period where I do think we're going to start to see some stuff kind of pop off, which is going to be interesting. My predictions have always been Bitcoin was going to hit 100K in 2024. That happened. 2025, the year we're in now, I still have 225. We will see if that happens. And then I think it's going to go down to about 175 in 2026, and then down to around 60 to 70, 60, 70, 80K in 2027, which would be the last cycle's high. And we've seen that in the past. We've seen that repeat. Will it happen again? It is all to see. This is what I was mentioning earlier. We have 2013, 2017, and 2021. These are the basically August, September, October, November, December of these halving years. So we're going to get to see how this all pans out. But if you look in 2013, you can see that 2013, 2017, and in 2021, September was a very, very, very bearish month. And I'm not sure if it's going to stay the same. We're going to get into the Fed. We're going to get into how that looks and, what's going to happen there with the Fed rates. But historically, in bull market cycles, September has been a very bearish month. You can see in 2013 went down only negative, I'll round up 2%. 2017 went down around negative 8%, rounding up. And then 2021, it went down negative 7%. However, in all of those years, not the halving years, the bull cycles, in 2013, you then saw a massive bounce by plus 60%. Plus 60% today would take Bitcoin up to, I don't know, like 170-ish, 175, 176, which would be crazy in just 1 month to go from 115 where we are today. And I think we called that out at the beginning. Right now, Bitcoin price is at 115. To go up 60% like it did in 2013 would be crazy. But as you can see, over the years, it's gone from plus 60%, then it was plus 47% in 2017. And then in 2021, it was plus basically 40%. So I could look at that trend and probably follow that trend. And you would say that maybe we're going to go plus, I don't know, 34, 35% in October if September's a negative month. But, and we'll get into this later, if the Fed does cut rates, which we can look at, that is what people are thinking is going to happen. Maybe September is actually in green. And then what does that mean for October, which has always been historically a very, very bullish month on the bull year cycle? Looking further down the road, you can see that in 2013, November of 2013 was crazy. It went up 450%. We will probably not ever see a month like that again, ever in Bitcoin. I hate to say ever, and I hate to say never, but that's just trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars coming in at this point in a month's time. And even when we have the biggest buys that we're seeing now, but it's all to see. Obviously, if the US dollar continues to lose purchasing power and starts to collapse and people really start to move massive amounts, massive. We're talking sovereign nations. We're talking like if BlackRock were to just put, 20% of their assets under management into Bitcoin in 1 month. Okay, maybe. But realistically, I think 2017 is a little bit better. You see 53% in November and then 40% in December. However, in 2021, it went down 7% in November, and then it went down 19% in December. I will probably show this every week on Future Signal Fridays as we kind of go forward into September and October to just kind of keep us grounded in historically what has happened. Other things that happened in Bitcoin this week, I saw this, Bitcoin hash rate hit 1 Zeta hash for the first time in history. I actually thought that this had happened before, and here's the chart for this. I was pretty convinced that this had actually happened before, but maybe that was like the 7 week or the 3 day or maybe that was just the 1 day average. I don't know if this is the 3 or 7 day average, which would obviously then show that it's not only breaking it and staying above, because I thought that we broke it back in like February of this year. But once again, maybe that was just cracking it and it wasn't a day's average. It wasn't a 3 or 7 day average. The iPhone 17 Pro and Bitcoin Orange also came out. And the question here is cop or drop. I don't feel strongly about this either way. I've had the iPhone forever. I've never had an Android. So to be fair, if it were time for me to get a new phone, I would just get it. But I do think it is cool that it was in Bitcoin Orange. I don't know. And if anyone wants to leave a comment, I don't know necessarily if they did this on purpose and they wanted it to be in Bitcoin Orange, or if they just wanted an orange iPhone because they never had one before. I do not know. What I do know, though, is iPhone prices in Bitcoin have absolutely gone down over the years if you're thinking in BTC. If you follow my YouTube channel, I'm very fascinated in the measuring of things in BTC. I have a recent episode out about how, housing prices have gone down in BTC even since 2020 to 2025 by 90% in the US, even though the fiat price has gone up by 20%. If we stay on that path, the average home in America will be around $500,000 by 2030. But in Bitcoin, it will be around 0.41 Bitcoin, which is crazy because you can get that today for, I don't know, $45,000, $46,000, $48,000. Crazy stuff. Looking at this iPhone as well, this is also pretty shocking, I think. So the iPhone 4S was 13.2 Bitcoin, which in today's money would be I don't know, math, $1.4 million maybe. And then today, the iPhone 17 is worth 0.0072 Bitcoin, which is crazy because that tech has, in theory, gotten better, even though the price has gone down in Bitcoin, which is wild. So I expect that price to keep going down till you have it to 0.0001 Bitcoin, one thousandth of a Bitcoin. And I think that will happen. Actually, that'd be more than 1/1000th of a Bitcoin, but I think that will happen sooner than later. And I think as Bitcoin approaches 7 figures, the question is going to be, do you really need a new iPhone, or maybe you should stack some Bitcoin? Once again, not financial advice. Zooming in more, you can kind of see the image a little bit clearer there, but this is just kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy that you can buy an iPhone for this much. And I'm sure that if you were talking about 1 Bitcoin being able to buy you an iPhone back when the 4S or the 5 came out, people would think you're crazy. But then even by the 6th, at that price when it came out, on the date that it came out, you were able to get 2 iPhones for 1 Bitcoin. So a lot of times I talk about the power of 0.1 Bitcoin, and I know that it sounds repetitive, and I know other people say it on the internet, and that's okay. It is going to continue to be very, very, very lot of Bitcoin, something that is hyper scarce. The amount of people that are going to be able to even afford 0.1 Bitcoin today on the planet, I'd say it's less than 1% of 1% of 1%. So if you do own 0.1 Bitcoin, you're already in the upper echelon. And now look at how many iPhone 17s you can buy. The other thing that happened this week with Bitcoin, I just continue to be impressed by what Jack Mallers is doing with Stripe. I think it's awesome. So he has no fees on DCAs. He's had this for a long time where once you set up, I think if you start buying, let's say $10 of Bitcoin a week, for example, I think on the first week you do pay fees, but once you set it up and it's recurring, then you don't pay fees, which is great. There's also no fees on getting paid in Bitcoin, which is something that they've just added. And I think that is really cool because I think things like Stripe, Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, they just had their IPO. We're going to talk about that. They're all basically just positioning themselves to be banks, but better banks because they're going to use crypto and it's just going to be so much easier. So many people, I would say in the next 5 years, they're just going to start getting paid and they'll be like, instead of attaching your Chase or your Wells Fargo or your Bank of America, you'll attach your Strike or you'll attach your Coinbase. And this will be easy to do and it will be seamless. The same way you set up pay right now if you're a W-2 employee at a bank. Right now we use account and routing numbers. We'll use wallet numbers, or you'll have a rotating wallet and we'll have to figure that out. But this is all happening, and free on-chain withdrawals. Great. I don't know what they should build next, but if you have an idea, Jack Mallers is very, very, very responsive on X, and that's something I like about him. Okay, let's move on. What else we got going on in Bitcoin? Okay, crypto. There wasn't much going on in crypto. I thought this was interesting. Paul Atkins saying, we must admit that crypto's time has come. He's actually had probably the best sound bites around crypto for the past 6-7 months when it comes to people from the government. I think talking David Sachs, I know that he's like the crypto czar. I don't really hear much from him. I'd like to hear more maybe from him, but Paul Atkins is crushing all the time. President Trump, he says, has tasked me with making America the crypto capital of the world. And I think that this is slowly happening, which is, or maybe not slowly happening. This is happening, which is very, very exciting. The other thing is Gemini's IPO happened, and this is founded by the Winklevi, and it was 20 times oversubscribed. I believe the Circle IPO is 20 to 25 times oversubscribed. So clearly, Wall Street, Main Street, they want access to crypto. They just don't want to do it on blockchain. They would rather have it via their traditional financial products that are probably already set up. So it is interesting that when these IPOs happen, it's been great if you've been able to get in, and obviously if you were in before the IPO, you made potentially generational money, which is awesome. AI. Let's look at AI. So this week I read this, and this was interesting. And actually, I'm gonna read the full whatchamacallit from description on Instagram. But this, when I first read this, I thought, okay, does this mean that Microsoft is going to only use Anthropic for AI in a shift? Because it says in shift from using OpenAI, but I wanted to read more. And so I'm going to actually read this out. It says Microsoft will pay to use Anthropic's technology for some, this is important, AI features in Office 365 apps. The information reported in a sign that the software firm is diversifying its artificial intelligence portfolio. The move will blend Anthropic and OpenAI technology in the apps after years in which Microsoft primarily used OpenAI. So it's going to be a blend of the two. For the new features, in Word, Excel, Outlook, and PowerPoint. Microsoft is developing its own AI models while integrating DeepSeek's models into the Azure cloud as it seeks to maximize AI output to meet growing demand. So they're using DeepSeek, they're using Anthropic, and they're using OpenAI. And the final things here says it has been OpenAI's biggest financial backer, having invested more than $13 billion into the AI startup and getting a head start in the AI race due to the company's models. So when I saw this, I originally thought, okay, wow, why would Microsoft switch away? Because it's a shift away from OpenAI, but really they're going to be layering those two. And they're also, it sounds like they've been using, but they're going to be using DeepSeek as well. Other news this week out of AI, which from the AI world, which I thought was fascinating, was that Albania has appointed AI-generated government minister to govern the country's finances. This is something I think you're going to start to see more and more, especially with smaller countries, maybe like Albania. There's a bunch of other small countries. I think the UN recognizes like 185 to 190 countries, and many of those are really small. And it might actually make more sense to just say, you know what, we're going to ship all that to AI and we're going to let them do the finances. That's interesting. That is at the financial level. I wonder what day that actually takes over at like the governing level. So I thought that was worth calling out. I don't know if you saw that, but wow. The other thing that happened is Elon Musk moved from the most wealthy person on the planet to the second most wealthy person on the planet as good old Larry Ellison jumped over him. I think he got $100 billion. His net worth increased by $100 billion this week, all thanks to AI and Oracle's cloud AI services. And so I thought that was definitely worth calling out. The other thing worth calling out is that in AI this week, the president seemingly put out a message for Charlie Kirk's death, in which the whole thing looks AI, and there's people who have broken it down. You can see like at one point his pinky disappears. I don't think that there's a problem using AI for video. Let me really think about how I want to say this. I don't think that there's a problem using AI for video in the same way that for hundreds of years, orators, the presidents don't always write their own speeches. They have someone who's going to be a speech writer, and they're just the orator of the speech. They're the messenger in many ways. They'll obviously approve the message, but they're not the ones that write everything. Similarly, I don't think that it's the worst thing in the world as long as the president has approved the message, as long as this is something that Donald Trump knows has been said and is okay. Because if not, then you're getting into a situation, especially with these older, between Xi, Putin, and Donald Trump, these guys are old. And so you could have a situation where maybe they didn't see this. Maybe they weren't the ones to like co-sign what was actually happening. And I think that over a long enough period of time, that is very, very dangerous. That's where you get into like a weekend at Bernie's, where Donald Trump's on the back nine playing in Florida, yet a video comes out from him in the Oval Office at the same time because they're able to just use AI. And maybe he didn't even approve that message. I think that gets kind of funky, and I think that gets kind of funky quick. But I wanted to definitely call this out because this is the first time that I know that a president of the United States has used AI to make a video. And if I were the Kirk family or from the Kirk camp right now, I would kind of feel like, wow, Donald, you couldn't come up with your own video. You had to use AI. I don't know. I think if you want to use AI to share a message to the nation about whatever, I think that's fine. But if you're trying to send a heartfelt message to a family that's lost a loved one, I think using AI is kind of weak, in my opinion. And I think it's very impersonable. But, anyways, wanted to call this out. This is the first time a US president has ever used AI that I think I know of, at least, to create a video. Personal finance. Let's dive right in. So, I tweeted this the other day, and I fully believe this, but it says by 2035, the gap between millennials that learn to actively invest their own money and those that passively follow the outdated playbook of a mortgage and 401k, there will be a simple line in the sand to delineate between these two camps: those that were actively investing their own money and figuring it out, and those that were just like, oh, I have a 401k and I have a mortgage, I'm fine. Those that will retire before 60 and those that may never retire. About 30% of millennials right now are on track to never retire. And I think it's actually 35%. When you look at that, it's millions and millions and millions and millions of people. Now, this is for a whole host of different reasons. But I think if you make money, and I think if you're making good money in a job, or you own a business, you need to think outside of the box of just a 401k and a mortgage. Because right now, I do not think that those things over a long enough period are going to outdo some of the inflation we're going to see over the next 5 to 10 years. And even if they do, I think you're going to stay relatively poor. So if you're in the middle class now, in 30 years, you're going to be in the middle class. Whereas I think people who are investing in AI, people who are investing in crypto, people who are investing in some of the newer, just tech companies that are kind of doing all of them. Galaxy would be one. Robinhood is obviously one. I think Coinbase is also really strong. If Kraken IPOs, I think that's going to go really well. None of this is financial advice. But the people that do actually invest in those over a long enough period of time, I do think that they're going to be able to separate themselves and kind of ascend into a different echelon. And as we move forward, it's really becoming the haves and the have-nots. And I think that will play out for millennials, for the people who can retire and the people who can't retire. So moving forward, IPOs, tech IPOs. So this is something when it comes to personal finance, I think is really interesting. If you are getting beyond just investing in index funds and you look at a company and you like what the company's doing, you like the leadership, you like the books, you think also the sector that they're going to be growing into has potential, right? If you're going to be investing in IPOs, I think that these are the sectors: AI, crypto, robots, biotech, and energy. There's also maybe a couple of others, but let's just stick with these ones. And then, so I think a strategy is Robinhood early access. And then once you get them, just hold on to them. Even if the stock goes up, stock goes down. If you believe in the company, you need to just hold on. If you don't know what happened with Carvana, you can go Google that. Carvana went down 99% and then exploded back up again and went basically 100x over between now and when the pandemic happened. It went down and then it went back up. So if you do believe in something and you have a product or a service that you've tried and you believe in, you just need to hold on to it. But I want to share a story, personal finance, about Figure. Figure is a robotics company, and you can go check out their website. Fascinating stuff. I'm very bullish on them, and I wanted to get in on their IPO. So I put in on, you can, through Robinhood, you can get access to the IPO before it basically goes out. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that well. So Robinhood sent me this. I'm like, great. I'm really bullish on Figure. I've been following them for a while. They're a private company. They're going to go public. Let me see how I can do this. Now, I missed this email. Okay. This says your initial public offering request, a max price per share of $24 is either below the final price share of 25, or there was a greater than 20% price change requiring your review. Now, I missed this. And you can see below, it says you have until September 11th, which was yesterday, at 12:30 a.m. to update your request, which was this morning. I totally is actually yesterday morning. I totally missed this. And so when it went out at 25, and even though I had in to buy at 24, I missed it. It went up to, I think, like 53. It's since calmed down, but to almost go up 100x almost out the gate, sorry, not 100x, to go up 100% out the gate was totally a misfire. And then so I got this. Your IPO shares request has been canceled. And I was only going to get 10 shares. We're looking at $240. And I don't mind sharing that here. But I missed the boat. And that was kind of annoying. Now, I'll probably buy in because I do believe in Figure, but I don't know if I'll see that low price. I think you'll see lower than $25, to be fair. You can quote me on this if we go into a bear market. But it's nice to just get the money in at a seemingly low price over the lifetime of a stock and then just sit. Remember what we talked about? You just got to hodl it. So, anyways, case study here. Make sure you're checking your email if you're trying to get into IPO early access through Robinhood or through your brokerage. Turn on the notifications. I say turn on Robinhood notifications. Review Robinhood daily. Just open it up and make sure that everything's good. Things I didn't do. And then follow the company's X. I'm not sure if Figure would have put something out saying that they would have increased from 24 to 25. But if you're going to invest in a stock, you should also always be watching to see what is going on. So this is kind of like my case study. Wanted to share that. The Fed, finally, this is personal finance, right? So the Fed is on track for 3 rate cuts this year. Now, before we talk about that, we're going to talk about the next segment here, which is prediction markets. Number of rate cuts in 2025, exactly 2 cuts is at 36%. This is on Kalshi. And exactly 3 cuts is at 49%. So that's a 50-50. But you could 100x your money if you believe in that. Once again, none of this is financial advice, but going back on track for 3 rate cuts right now, if you believe that they're on track, and this is from Reuters yesterday, I believe, or 2 days ago. So if you believe that they're on track for 3 rate cuts, you could put $100 right now. If it hits, you're going to get payout of $200. I don't know. Exactly 2 cuts, I think, is less likely. People are really thinking it's going to be 3. I'm not really sure exactly how many rate cuts it's going to be. I do believe, as does Kalshi right now, that the Fed decision in September, which is going to be next week on the 17th, is going to be to cut 25 basis points. Will it be to cut more than 25 basis points? Only 11% are thinking that. But one of the things I want to call out here is that there's $190 million on Kalshi that believes that there's going to be a rate cut next week of at least 25%. Well, 25%, not greater than 25%. This is actually my position, and I wanted to share this for full transparency. I put in $18 back on August 12th when it was 1 in 5. And I said, will the Fed do a rate cut of more than 25 basis points this year? So at 1 in 5. So if I win, I'm going to get paid out $94. It's gone up since up to 26%, which is great, right? My 1880 has gone up to 2444. I'm not sure. The information that came out recently around inflation, I think the CPI was much higher than people expected it to. I think that throws things off. If that were lower, I would say that maybe there would be a basis cut of 25 BPS or greater, basically 50 basis points. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm going to win this. I'm not sure if I'll take a cash out. I'm just waiting until next week, and then we'll go from there. Maybe there is even a 50-point basis cut. That would really surprise me, and that would send kind of shockwaves. I think they'll start at 25, and then we'll see where they go from there. The other things on Kalshi that right now I think are just pretty nice payouts is 50%. You put in $100, you're going to pay out 154 if Bitcoin goes over 130. And if there's a rate cut next week on the 17th, I do believe we get over 130,000 this year. That almost seems silly to me. And if you go back, we can go all the way back. I'm going to go all the way back to the Bitcoin numbers here. If you look at the Bitcoin numbers, remember by the end, and that was for the end of the year, not in September, for the end of the year. October has always been bullish. And if we think this trend is going to stay, maybe it's 32 or 34%, even 34%, if Bitcoin's above 102 or 101, takes you over 130%. So let's go back to the Kalshi and look at that. But I think that is, if you're looking at Kalshi and you're trying to figure out, okay, how can I bet on the markets? For me, this is a great bet. Now, I already have bets in on this. I've had bets in on this for a while, so that's why I'm showing you this one. But that's great. I think there's another one too. If there's a rate cut on the 17th, I think Ethereum easily by the end of the year goes over $5,250. Its all-time high is like 4,978 or something. It's not 5,000, but it's like right underneath it. To go over a little bit more, I think you need Tom Lee doing some rounds. I think you need some other like bullish things happening, but I think it's all to play for it. And I think that these two are super underrated because this is, basically you're going to get 50% payback. And this is the same 50% payback. So the fact that these are out there right now before the rate cuts, if you're looking on Kalshi, you're looking for something, check these out. The other thing is that Poly Market partners with Chainlink. This just happened. about an hour ago. Polymarket has partnered with Chainlink to launch 15-minute crypto price markets featuring instant settlement and industry-leading security. So this is great. Chainlink is an OG at this point, and I do expect when Polymarket comes into the US, it could be the first time that retail users use a prediction market and they do it on rails that are going to be blockchain rails. Now, Kalshi did start out, I believe, as a crypto project, but then they pivoted quickly from that. We'll see. In the future, I think all of the prediction markets will be eventually all on chain. I know obviously Polymarket is but when it comes in the US, we're going to see how that plays, especially with this Chainlink announcement. Tech around the world. We already talked about Albania moving its finances through AI, which is fascinating. This is some other news. Nepal elects its prime minister via Discord. I personally do not like Discord. I think it's a cesspool. There's so many scammers in there. Even in the official Discord, somebody will pop up and be a scammer, whatever. I did want to call this out. I think it's crazy that Nepal has elected an interim prime minister. Nepal right now is going through a political revolution. And so for them to use Discord after the Gen Z overthrow the government, I think is super telling. And then they had this underneath, but on Polymarket, it says there's only a 7% chance of foreign intervention in Nepal to stop the Zoomer takeover. The Discord mods are in charge now. I think it's not a good thing to have the Discord mods in charge of a company, in charge, of a country, but that's what we're doing. And Kashfi said, never underestimate the power of good Discord. It can overthrow governments. I thought that was solid as well. Now we are getting into the content rec section of this week. So the first one I want to call out and I actually meant to put in the picture of this is the podcast we did. I'm finally getting back to guest podcasts, which is great. And I had on Alexander Bloom, who is the CEO and co-founder of 2Prime. And we talked about how Bitcoin treasuries are monetizing their Bitcoin. Really great conversation. Even if you don't own MicroStrategy or you don't own MetaPlanet or you don't own some of these other Bitcoin holding companies, it was a really good conversation. And this was one of my biggest takeaways, I think, was that Alex really did a great job breaking down how the way they talk about where they are always positions them to sound like they're geniuses. He said, it's kind of like they can't lose. They being, let's just use strategy, for example. It's kind of like strategy can't lose because it's either we've grown MNAV, which is good because we can dump more shares on the market as strategy has done for 4.5 years now, or we've grown Bitcoin per share, which means our stock price just collapsed. So no matter how they cut it, they're always winning. But I think they, being strategy, is winning because they're the ones getting Bitcoin and they're selling basically synthetic Bitcoin through stocks that they're constantly diluting. Over a long enough period of time, I do not know what's going to happen. I think strategy is maybe one of the only ones that's going to be able to weather the storm. But I do think that the bear market is not going to be kind to people who do not know what they're doing with these Bitcoin and crypto or digital asset treasury companies. But all to see. The book I'm rereading, as I left my job 2 weeks ago today, the book I'm rereading right now is The E-Myth. It's Why Most Small Businesses Don't Work and What to Do About It. It's like a 110-page book, but I highly recommend it. If you're a small business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're anyone, it's a really easy read, really quick read based on principles and business philosophies that don't necessarily, don't stack up now that we're in a world of blockchain and AI. If anything, they add even more value. So I'm rereading that, and I highly recommend that if you're looking for something to read, it's great. Like I said, it's only 110, 120 pages. And if you search the E-Myth PDF on Google, tons of stuff pops up because it's a pretty classic book. I think it was written in the early 90s or the late 80s, but like I said, it is one of those books that is timeless. And I've shared it with many people in my life. So I'm rereading that. It's a great read. Finally, if you want to be a guest on the Tuesday guest slots, like I said, on Tuesday, we're going to have guest podcasts come out. This past week, Alex came on to talk about how Bitcoin is monetizing their treasuries. This next week, we have a digital artist coming on who's actually going to talk about how the future of art is probably IRL experiences, which is interesting. He's sold digital art NFTs at Sotheby's. He is world renowned. He's painted murals around the world. Very interesting stuff. His name is Marco Santini. He'll be up this next Tuesday. And I think the Tuesday after that, I'm not actually sure. I have to look at who's going to come on. We're going to be doing a couple of recordings next week, so I got to figure out which one's going to come on. But if you want to be a guest, you need to be active on X. That's it. You need to have an account and be active on X. You need to be a tech builder or a founder. You need to be building something, or you've founded a company. You need to have previous pod experiences. I normally just ask people to send me over an example of them being on a podcast so I can hear how they engage with the host, which would in this case be me. So that's interesting. So if you want to do that, go ahead. DMs are open wherever you're watching this. Just hit me up. And then if you want to be on Future Signal Fridays, I'd prefer to not do this every week by myself and just be a talking head. So if you want to hop on and talk about the tech of the week, talk about AI, the crypto, the Bitcoin, hit me up. And the only thing you need there is you just need to be active on X, because when it goes out on X, I just want you to reshare it to your community. So that's really all that we have. Make sure you are following us at Future Signal XYZ across socials. And I will see everyone next Friday for another installation of Future Signal Fridays. And like I said, if you want to be a guest, please go ahead and reach out. You need to be active on X, a tech builder or a founder, and you need to have previous pod experiences. That's really what I'm looking for. Ideally, tech being AI, crypto, Bitcoin. But as you'll see, I have guests coming up into the future that aren't always building in AI or crypto, but I think they're doing really interesting things that is totally creating Future Signal. So if you want to be on Future Signal Fridays and hang out with me and basically send me over screenshots of stuff you want to talk about from Bitcoin, crypto, AI, personal finance, macro, tech around the world, just go ahead and DM on X. You can DM the Future Signal account, which once again is Future Signal XYZ, or you can DM me at my personal account. So I hope that everyone is well. And thank you for checking out this first edition of Future Signal Fridays.